Hello! Let's review some practice problems for standard English conventions for the reading writing section on the SAT. The skill we're going to be working on is form, structure, and sense. So this first question reads, in recent years, economists around the world have created new tools that quantify the overall well-being of a country's citizens. Economists in India, for example, use an ease of living index. This tool blank economic potential, sustainability, and citizens' quality of life. Again, this section will always give us the same question here, so this is the first and last time you're going to hear me read it. Which choice completes the text so that it conforms to the conventions of standard English? Now remember, one of the first things we're going to do is to look at the answer choices and notice what's varying. Measures, had measured, would have measured, will measure, have been measuring. You'll notice that they all are singular, or could be singular and plural. He measures, he or they had measured, he would have measured, they would have measured, he will have been measuring, they will have been measuring. Works for both, yes? So this is not testing us on verb agreement, but we definitely are varying the verbs in tense. So this is testing us on verb tense. Remember, for verb tense, in order to tell what tense we should be in, we should be looking at words that literally refer to time or other words in the sentence that are happening at the same time. So here we have recent years, that's like nowish. Economists around the world have created, remember this is a double word verb, we're going to ignore this one when it comes to tense and say have. If they have a dog, they have it right now, so this is present perfect. It started in the past and still going on now. That quantified the overall well-being of a country's citizens. Economists in India use, which is also present tense, so we want to match that present tense and say A is in present tense, B is past, C is past, D is future. So we're going to pick A for this one. Now, when we look at the answer choices on this one, we notice a couple things. Phrases could either be possessive or not possessive, and the rest of these guys are the same, but its and their is varying. Remember, that's singular and that's plural. Yeah? Also, this is plural possessive, and this here is singular possessive when the apostrophe goes on the inside. So now that we know what they're testing us on, we have to, one, decide, should the phrases be possessive, and should it be singular or plural possessive if so? And second, what's its or their referring to? Is that singular or plural? So let's read the sentence. French philosopher René Descartes doubted whether he could prove his own existence. Eventually, he found proof in his famous phrase, I think, therefore I am. The blank complexity. Only those who exist would be able to ponder their existence. So, the phrase's simplicity. Does the simplicity belong to the phrase? Is it the simplicity of the phrase? Absolutely. So we can get rid of the one that isn't possessive. Now the question is, how many phrases are we talking about? The phrase, this one phrase. So it's singular, which gets rid of our plural possessive. Now we want to say to ourselves, masks its simplicity or their simplicity? Which one of these do we want? Whose simplicity? The phrase, the singular phrase. So we wouldn't want the plural one. That gets rid of C for us, and the answer is D. Going on to our next one. What is the correct pronunciation of Kiribati? Listen, I know how this ends, so I'm going to go with this pronunciation for now. In the Gilibertese language spoken by residents of the island nation, the letter combination TI makes the S sound. As a result, the country's name, blank, 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 pronounced Kiribati. So, which choice best completes the text so that it conforms to the conventions of standard English? Take a look. We have a bunch of verbs in the answer choices. What's varying? Well, this is present plural, present plural, present plural, present singular. At this point, you might be saying, well, I have 3 identical answer choices and they can't all be right. Can I just pick this? And I would say, kind of, yeah. But let's guarantee that we don't want something plural by finding the subject. What's pronounced Kiribati? It's the country's name, which is singular. So yes, we do want our singular verb. American abstract artist Richard blank is installations to make passerbys keenly aware of how one's movements are affected by the physical features of one's environment, assembles large-scale steel plates into sculptures that dominate the outdoor spaces they occupy. Now, this can be a tricky question, but let's look at the answer choices here. We have Sarah in all of them, so let's ignore that. It says is intending, comma, intends, intending, intends. What I'm noticing is that is intending is a full verb form. He is intending. He intends. He intends. Those are all subjects and verbs. Remember, intending, unless it has a helping or linking verb like it has in A, is not alone enough to be a verb. So the one that's standing out to me as different is C. And I'm wondering if I should introduce a full verb here, fully conjugated for Sarah, or if I already have that and don't want to introduce that. So let's look at the sentence. Very helpful here will be to find the core sentence. American abstract artist Richard Serra. If I read it like this, with A, just look what's happening. American abstract artist Richard Serra, oopsies, is intending his installations to make passerbys keenly aware of how one's movements are affected by the physical features of one's environment. If I do this, then this here is my main clause. And this one here, after it, should be dependent. It should be just stuck on, right? But it has a conjugated verb form, assembles, and it doesn't have a subject. So if I introduce this verb here, it's a little bit like saying, and I'm going to type this out for us here, like a simpler example of this sentence where I'm going to take out a lot of the extra phrases. So I'm going to leave out American abstract artist Richard, and I'm just going to say Sarah is intending his installation to make passers-by aware. And I'm going to just leave it there. I'm going to take out all the prepositional phrases, comma, assembles large, I'm going to say assembles sculptures, assemble sculptures. There we go. We can keep it nice and simple like this. Sarah is intending his installations to make passerbyers aware, assembles sculptures. Here, you'll notice that we have two verb forms, is intending, or two verbs rather, that are in the same verb form. They're both conjugated for Sarah. Sarah is intending and Sarah assembles. So if I were to have the word and here, I could say he is intending his installations to make passerbyers aware and assemble sculptures. He does those two verbs, but without the word and there, they're not joined correctly. And it's like I have two verbs for one subject and like one main clause here with like some weirdly hanging out conjugated subject. If I want to, a conjugated verb without a subject, if I want this to work, I would have to change this to assembling sculptures like that, to describe the main clause without interfering with it by adding an extra verb. So what we really need to do here, because we can't change assembles, we have to potholder this part here, Sarah, comma, intending his installations to make passerbys, let's say passerbys, just to make it passerbys like that? No, I don't know. Many people, yeah. A passerby, we can add that there, there you go. A passerby aware, assemble sculptures. Now our main clause is Sarah here assembles sculptures. That's our main clause, and this is just a little interrupting clause. And notice that intending is not conjugated here, so it's not like taking over as the verb of the sentence. So if we do intending here, is intending here, well, let me see if I can't copy this. Let's get rid of this for a second. Now we can try putting it in the whole sentence. So, there we go. If I put in here answer choice A and say Sarah is intending to make the passerbyers aware, we have this as our main clause. This could stand alone as a sentence, this part right here. Oopsies, right there. That could stand alone as its own sentence. And this part is kind of like hanging out by itself. And even though assembles is conjugated to be with Richard Serra, they can't connect because of this comma right here. And there's no, because of this comma right here. See that comma? And that's problematic, right? So if we take it back a little bit and get rid of A, we can try inserting B. Well, in the interest of saving time, let's go ahead and insert C so you can see how it's different, because A, B, and D all have this problem of having that same conjugated verb. If I say Sarah, comma, intending, notice now our main clause is American abstract artist Richard Serra. We skip over our potholder phrase, assembled large-scale steel plates into sculptures that dominate the outdoor spaces they occupy. And this part here is just like a little potholder phrase without an extra verb that's trying to connect to Richard Serra. So it's almost like abstract artist Richard Serra, oh, a side note, intending that assembles large-scale steel plates. So that's the structure that we want, and that's why C is going to be our answer. C is going to be our answer for these guys. All right, let's look at the next one. Entomologist Yash Sondhi and Samuel Fabian have tried to explain why moths fly erratically around light sources at night. Knowing that flying insects keep their backs pointed towards the sunlight during the day. Now we're going to talk a lot more about this rule when we talk about sentence structure, but it is technically classified as form, structure, and sense. But I'll give you a little introduction to it now. This is what's known as a modifier. It's a describey phrase. And when describey phrases come at the beginning of the sentence, whatever it's talking about has to come right here, right after. So whenever you see a describey phrase followed by a comma and then underline, I want you to ask yourself, who is that describing? What's knowing that flying insects keep their backs pointed towards the sunlight during the day? Well, looking at just the first words of each of the answer choices, whoever that's talking about has to come right next. Could it be the researchers that know that flying insects keep their backs pointed towards sunlight during the day? Sure, researchers could know that. Could the researchers' theory know that? Notice the trap that made it look like it was researchers first, but it's not. It's researchers' theory. Theories can't know anything. They're just theories. We can cross that out. Also, I don't think moths know that flying insects keep their backs pointed towards the sunlight during the day. That would be an awful lot for a moth to know. So we can get rid of C and D, which leaves us with our answer A. So these can be really fun if you ask yourself what is being described by that phrase and put it right after. The issue with modifiers, the thing I highlighted in yellow, is that they themselves don't indicate who they're talking about. So placement becomes really important. All right, let's look at another one. In her 1983 book, The Managed Heart, Commercialization of Human Feelings, sociologist Arlie Russell Hochschild, no points for pronunciation, first explored at length her conception of a sociology of emotions, the idea that the various cultural and ideological frameworks a person has internalized, class, gender, political affiliation, etc., blank each emotional reaction that person has with a situation. So, which choice completes the text so that it conforms to the conventions of standard English? Let's look what's varying. We have underlies, that's present singular, is underlying, present singular, underlie, present plural, and D, has been underlying, present perfect singular. It looks like I have 3 presents and 1 four presents. They're all present, so they're not testing us on verb tense. And then what's varying is the number. A, B, and D are singular, C is plural, which makes me a little bit feel like the answer is C, but let's double check it. What's underlying each emotional reaction? When I read from the beginning of the sentence, it seems like it's not the managed heart that underlies it. It's not the sociologist Arlie Russell Hochschild. Could it be her conception of a sociology of emotions that's underlying each emotion? No, it's something else. Is it an idea that's underlying it? No. It seems like the various cultural and ideological frameworks a person has is what's underlying each emotional reaction. The various cultural and ideological frameworks. So again, this made it a little bit tricky to identify the subject because there's a lot of different options for our subject, and we really have to think to ourselves, what does this sentence say is underlying each emotional reaction? It's the frameworks that the person has internalized. So the frameworks is plural, so let's get rid of all the singular ones and pick our plural one. But again, even if you're having a really hard time finding the subject, say you thought it was, the idea, you'd have a very hard time eliminating anything besides C. You'd be like, well, all these guys could work, technically speaking. They're all kind of the same. That should send you back and say, you know what? I didn't find my proper subject. It can't be the idea. It has to be these frameworks. That makes more sense, and it only leaves me with one right answer. All right, let's look at the next bit. Each night in Gijón, Spain, a section of the city's marina is bathed in a soft green glow. The source of the glow is the Árbol de la Sidra, a large sculpture made up of 3,200 recycled glass bottles. A lamp inside the tree-shaped structure blank the green glass. Looking at the answer choices, we see will be illuminating, that's future, illuminates, singular present, would illuminate, past, illuminated, past. Let's see what we have. Let's look for words that literally refer to time or other verbs in the sentence, because what's varying is time period, and the answer choice is verb tense. So each night, that means every night, even including tonight, is bathed in a soft green glow. The source of the glow is this thing, right? And even though it says it's made up, that's not the main clause. You want to look for the verb in the main clause. The lamp inside the tree-shaped structure, it looks like we're going for is, so that's present tense. That gets rid of future and past tense, which leaves us with our one and only present tense. Now, some people might get confused about this word made, but that made is part of like made up. It's like constructed of. It's actually more like an adjective there. For example, if I said the cookie is made of chocolate, now it's part of the verb is made. But if I say the cookie, comma, made of chocolate, comma, is delicious, now the verb is as in is delicious. But made there is just describing. It's a describey phrase like it is here rather than the verb. All right, let's look at the next one. Ooh, this is going to be another one of those modifiers, so keep an eye open for this. Rabinal Chiaji, maybe, is a pre-colonial Maya dance drama performed annually in Rabinal, a town in the Guatemalan highlands. Based on events that occur when Rabinal was a city-state ruled by a king, blank had once been an ally of the king but was later captured while leading an invading force against him. So tell me, what was based on events that occurred when Rabinal was a city-state ruled by a king? What was based on events? Was it Rabinal Aki, which is a dance drama? Was it this thing, which was a military leader? Was it the military leader? Or was it there was a military leader? What was based on events that occurred? Well, I don't think people are based on events that occur, so I think we can cross those guys out. And again, there was a military leader is not the thing that was based on events. It was the dance drama that was based on events. So that modifier describes the dance drama, which should go right after the comma. All right. Looking at the answer choices here, is, having been, to be, being. You might notice that this is our only conjugated verb. You could say Donna is happy. You wouldn't be able to say Donna having been happy, or Donna to be happy, or Donna being happy, right? So we have to ask ourselves, do we want a verb there, or do we already have one? So the sentence says, according to the traditional RYB, red, yellow, blue color model, yellow is a complementary color to purple. However, yellow blank considered complementary to blue in modern color theory. So, what you'll notice is we don't already have a verb in this sentence. We can't just say yellow considered complementary. We have to say yellow is considered complementary, because that gives us the verb for the sentence that we don't already have. So if yellow is our subject, is considered would have to be our verb. If we say, however, yellow having been considered complementary, or yellow to be considered complementary, or yellow being considered complementary, we wouldn't have a main verb for our core sentence, so that would be wrong. So we want to pick A for this one. And again, noticing that A is conjugated and B, C, D is not, is a really good hint for this one. Oopsies, there we go. According to linguist Martin Jus, speaker of the English language blank 5 main registers: frozen, formal, consultative, casual, and intimate, which they rotate between depending on the situation. Looking at the answer choices, we have use, present plural, is using, present singular, uses, present singular, has used, present perfect singular. Again, plural, singular, 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 we're varying in number, and this is the one alone guy, the only plural, so I'm guessing that maybe our subject might be plural. But let's look. What's doing the using of 5 main registers? Watch out for that prepositional phrase of the English language. It's the speakers that use, not speakers is using, or speakers uses, or speakers has used. So that's going to be our subject. Speakers, so our verb needs to be plural. Okay, let's look at the next one. Looking at the answer choices, you can see this one's testing us on pronouns. Them is plural, this is singular, that is singular, it is singular. So we might think that this might be tempting, but let's give the sentence a read and see if we can find the antecedent. When they were first introduced to Western Europe by Byzantium in the 11th century, table forks were met with much resistance. The Bishop of Ostia, St. Peter Damian, condemned the eating utensils because he considered something dangerous and unnecessary luxury items. What did he consider dangerous and unnecessary luxury items? The utensils. Utensils are plural, which gets rid of the singular ones, and we can pick the plural one. You can see how helpful it is to look at the answer choices at the beginning to kind of weed out or identify what you're being tested on, and by that you might even be able to weed out some wrong answer choices. All right, let's take a look at the next one. Looking at the answer choices here, we have verbs. We have plural present, past plural, present perfect plural, and past singular. So we're varying not only tense, but also number. So let's go and give the sentence a read and see if we can identify both of these things. In the 1970s, Janaki Ammal, a prominent botanist, emerged as a powerful voice in India's environmental conservation movement. Her exhaustive chromosomal survey of plants in Silent Valley, a pristine tropical forest in Kerala, India, that is home to nearly 1,000 species of native flora, many of which are endangered, blank instrumental in the government's decision to preserve the forest. So we want to know what was instrumental in the government's decision to preserve the forest. What was instrumental? What was it? It seems like it might be her exhaustive chromosomal survey, because watch how we do. Of plants, our prepositional phrase, in Silent Valley. Then we have potholder phrase, a pristine tropical forest in India. Then we have a dependent clause surrounded by commas. That is home to nearly 1,000 species of native flora, which many of which are endangered. And we're back into it here. So this needs to match our survey, which is singular. Remember, A is plural, B is plural, C is plural. The only one that's singular is D. So we can continue. Looking at the answer choices here, one thing that ups the level of difficulty is they've made a contraction. This one's has not been. Remember I said always read them as two words. Was not, is not, are not. So the nots are in all of them, right? But check it out. A is present singular, present perfect singular, past singular, present singular, present plural. I'm noticing I have 3 singulars and 1 plural. I'm also noticing I have 1 past and 3 present. So let's give a look and see what we want. The artistic talents of Barbara Chase Ribot, most known for her 1979 historical novel Sally Hemings and the conversation it inspired, limited to the realm of prose. She first excelled in sculpture, where her affinity for bronze, a material she described as timeless due to its use across eras and cultures, became part of her artistic identity. So, when we look at this, we're seeing she first excelled, that's past tense, and then material she described became part of her artistic identity. All of these are past tense, but I want to know what the subject is because I'm really tempted by was not because of all the past tense verbs, but confirming the subject would be really helpful, even though I'm tempted by this one, because it's not super clear that I couldn't use present tense here, because the limiting stuff does not necessarily have to have happened at the same time as she was doing the describing or the excelling or becoming part of her artistic identity. So I'm not 1,000% sure it's that one, and I'm not sure we can be absolutely guided by tense, but luckily we have agreement too. What was not limited to the realm of prose? Her talents of Barbara Chase. Then we have that little potholder phrase surrounded by commas. So it's definitely her talents, which are plural. Remember, A is singular, B is singular, C is singular, D is the only one that's not singular. So while this was varying the tense, it wasn't really testing us on tense. And I think we can kind of tell that, one, because these verbs that are in the sentence aren't necessarily happening at the same time as the verb that we're looking for. And also that they're varying in agreement too, so we can kind of shore up our defenses by looking at agreement as well. Let's get this next one. Looking at the answer choices, I have used, which is a conjugated verb form, past tense. Then I have to have used, to use, and using. I have the infinitive and the word that ends in ing, the present participle. So I'm noticing that this one's the odd man out. Let's see if I want a verb in that sentence or if I already have one and don't need an extra one. It says, in 1929, Edwin Herbert Land invented a polarizing filter that was featured in a number of products, from sunglasses to 3D movies. A decade later, Land blanked his technology to invent the world's first instant camera, the Polaroid Land camera. So, do we already have a verb for what Land did? No, we don't. Land used his technology to invent the world's first camera. If I say Land to have used his technology, that wouldn't be a complete sentence, or Land to use his technology, or Land using his technology. It doesn't give us the subject and verb we need to make the core sentence. Let's look at the next one. Looking at these answer choices here, you can see we have pronouns. We have plural for A, plural for B, plural for C, and singular for D, which makes D very tempting, but let's double check what it's referring to. We know on the more challenging ones, it can be a trap. So Water in the North Atlantic Ocean is pushed eastward by powerful winds, but the rotation of Earth and interference from nearby land masses together cause blank to swirl into a massive turning whirlpool, also called the North Atlantic Gyre, that spins clockwise. So tell me, what is being caused to swirl in a massive turning whirlpool? What is it? What's gonna be doing the swirling? Give the sentence a read and see. It seems like what's swirling is the water that we referred to. The water in the North Atlantic Ocean is going to be swirling. Now, water here is singular. It didn't say waters, which means we can get rid of the plural ones and pick our singular one that was tempting in the first place. Let's take a look at the next one. Looking at the answer choices here, notice I have two different forms of it's. Remember, it's like that means it is, and it's like that is possessive. Yeah? So, if we're looking at this one, the soundtrack to Mira Nair's 1991 film Mississippi Masala expressively captures the clashing of cultures that happens when blank, a young Indian woman from Uganda and a young African man from Mississippi, meet. Featured throughout the film are songs from Uganda's Afrigo Band, the Indian composer L. Subramaniam, and the Mississippi blues musician Sam Chatmon. So, would we say when it is two protagonists or it's two protagonists? Well, it's the protagonists that belong to the soundtrack, right? So we want to say, okay, it's probably possessive and not it is two protagonists, which can get rid of some answer choices for us. So let's get rid of the it is option. Now, what's the difference? Do I want the protagonists to be possessive or plural? Singular, possessive, or plural? Well, it looks like I have two, a man and a woman, protagonists. So I definitely want protagonists to be plural. And again, here, they're not possessing anything. They're not possessing the meeting. Yeah, it's not that the protagonists meet like they own the meeting, just one of them. So we can get rid of this guy. We'll pick D. Notice how this difference is actually two differences. One is singular, one's plural, and one's possessive, and one's not possessive, which means we can decide on either account that makes our life the easiest. I think deciding on singular and plural is easiest, but again, if you think deciding on possessive or not possessive is easiest, please feel free to do that. Let's look at our next one. Looking at the answer choices again, we have the difference between possessive and not possessive, possessive and not possessive, and singular and plural. So let's see which one we want. It can take time for proposed amendments to the U.S. Constitution to become law. For example, the 22nd Amendment, which limits the number of terms presidents can serve, was first proposed in 1947, but wasn't approved by the required 3/4 majority of state legislators until 1951. Which choice completes the text that conforms to the conventions of standard English? Well, which limits the number of terms presidents can serve. Is it the president's terms? Now, it might be very tempting to say, yeah, presidents have terms, but we're not saying it's the terms of the president. That's a great way to test if it should be possessive. If you can say, swap the words and put an of in the middle. So you'd say presidents of the terms of the president's terms, would show if the presidents should be possessive. If you want to say the terms should be possessive, is it the president of the terms? No, that doesn't make sense to say, which limits the number of presidents of the terms. So terms should not be possessive. So we can get rid of the possessive terms. They're not possessing the presidents. The terms don't possess the presidents, but do the presidents possess the terms? They do, but number of terms presidents can serve, but it's not the terms that's possessive. Now the question is, should presidents be possessive? Is it the can of the presidents? No, presidents can, subject, verb. It shouldn't be possessive. So we can get rid of the possessive on presidents and pick which limits the number of terms presidents can serve, not possessive. All right, looking at the answers here, we have verbs. We have A, that's plural, present perfect. We have B, that's present plural. C, that's present singular. And D, that's present plural. So what's standing out to me is A, B, and D are all plural, and C is singular. So I'm thinking if I find the subject, I might also have found my answer, but let's double check. Solar punk is an art movement that imagines renewable energy powered technology infused complementarily into nature. In Paolo Bacigalupi's solar punk short story, Efficiency, an artificial intelligence that absorbs sustainable energies, redistributing them through intricate networks of weights and generators, blank Chicago's energy grid. So let's see if we can find the subject of this sentence. Let's go all the way to the beginning. So we have in Paolo's solar punk short story, Efficiency, we have then a potholder phrase here. Do you see that little potholder phrase? And then we have another potholder phrase, redistributing them through the intricate network of generators. So what do we see was powering Chicago's energy grid? So I'll give you a second to take a look and think, what is the subject? Oh, I misread this. I take this back. Let's start here by asking ourselves a very good question. What's doing the powering of Chicago's energy grid? Yes, in Paolo's solar punk short story, Efficiency, that's just an introductory phrase. An artificial intelligence that absorbs sustainable energies. That's the thing that is powering the grid. This is our potholder phrase here. And then we have a dependent clause here. An interrupting phrase here, that absorbs sustainable energies. It's an artificial intelligence that's powering Chicago's energy grid. The intelligence, one, which gets rid of our plural words. We could pick the singular one that was tempting to begin with. Let's look at another one. Looking at the answer choices, do you see we have developing, to develop, having developed. We have our present participle, developing and having developed. And we have our infinitive, to develop. And then we have this guy that's conjugated. It's tempting. Let's give a read and see if we need to introduce a verb there. Classical composer Florence Price's 1927 move to Chicago marked a turning point in her career. It was there that Price premiered her first symphony, a piece that was praised for blending traditional romantic motifs with aspects of Black folk music and blank supportive relationships with other Black artists. Here, take a note. We're making a list of her verbs. It was there that Price premiered this thing, and we're listing verbs, like the dog eats meat and loves bones. We wouldn't want to say the dog eats meat and loving bones, or the dog eats meat and to love bones. We'd want to match the first verb in the list, premiered, so we're going to select developed. While exploring Nevada's Gypsum Cave in 1930, Seneca and Abenaki archaeologist Bertha Parker made her most famous discovery, the skull of a now extinct ground sloth, I'm not even going to attempt it, alongside human-made tools. Parker's crucial finding was the first blank humans in North America as far back as 10,000 years ago. So when we look at the answer choices, we have places, which is interesting. It could, I think, I just had a thought that I would like to mention here. Places could be a verb, like she places her hat on the hat rack, yes? Or it could be like locations, like a plural noun. We also have placed, which would be a past tense verb. We have place, which again could be location, a noun, or it could be they place their hats on the bed. And then we have to place, which is infinitive verb form. So if we're looking at this sentence, it looks like we already have a main verb. Parker's crucial finding was. Her finding was subject verb, right? So we already have our verb in place. Was the first places humans, placed humans, place humans, to place humans? The object for the verb was is first, and to place is acting as a modifier for first. So what was the finding? It was the first. The first to do what? The first to place humans in North America 10,000 years ago. So when a verb serves as a modifier within a noun phrase, it must be what's called non-finite, meaning it's not conjugated to a specific subject. So for example, the present perfect, the ones that end in ing, or the infinitives to, would be non-finite, meaning it's not conjugated for our subject. The infinitive form to place is the only non-finite option among the answer choices that make sense in this context. A would be incorrect because the object for the verb was is first, and places here would be acting as a modifier for first. What was the thing that Parker's finding did? Was it the first to do? Place humans in North America 10,000 years ago. So when a verb acts as a modifier, again, it must be non-finite. But places is a finite form of a verb. So same reason why B and C are also incorrect for that same reason. They're conjugated in a way that D is not. All right, let's look at the next one. One of the first few African-American global explorers during the turn of the 20th century. Are we noticing that that's a describey phrase, that that's a modifier? So whatever we're modifying has to come right after, has to come right here. Which of the answer choices puts one of the first few African-American global explorers during the 20th century first? Was it Matthew Henson? Was it 1891 and 1909? Was it Greenland, or was it several treks? Well, the only one that sounds like it could be an explorer is Matthew Henson. So we're going to go with A. Let's keep an eye out for this next one. Looking at the answer choices we have there, as in they are. We're going to read it as two words. There, that's possessive. It's, that's possessive, and it''s, which we'll read as two words, it is. When they were first discovered in Australia in 1798, duck-billed, beaver-tailed platypuses so defied categorization that one scientist assigned them the name Ornithorhynchus paradoxus, paradoxical bird snout. The animal, which lays eggs but also nurses blank young with milk, has since been classified as belonging to the monotremes group. Okay, so who nurses young with milk? Who are we talking about? Well, in this sentence, we're referring to the animal. The animal, that's singular. So we're going to get rid of the plural ones. Let's get rid of A and B. And again, this could be really tricky because it sounds like we're talking about all platypuses ever, but this sentence references the animal, which lays, singular, and nurses, singular. So we know we're going with singular. Now the question is, did the young belong to it? If they do, so it should be possessive. We wouldn't want to say, but also nurses, it is young with milk. So we'll get rid of D and pick C. All right, let's look at this next one here. Oh, I think we can see something interesting. Known as Earth's living skin, biocrusts are thin layers of soil held together by surface-dwelling microorganisms such as fungi, lichen, and cyanobacteria. Notice this modifier, this describey phrase, fortifying soil in arid ecosystems against erosion. We want to look for something to come right here, right after, that's fortifying soil in arid ecosystems against erosion. Does a recent studies estimate do that? Does an estimated 60% reduction of global dust emissions do that? Did these crusts do that? Or does a recent study do that? I would be really weirded out if a study's estimate or a reduction in dust emissions or a recent study could fortify against erosion. I'm thinking it's probably these crusts we were talking about that are thin layers of soil held together by surface-dwelling microorganisms that are protecting the arid, fortifying the soil and arid ecosystems. That's the one that makes the most sense. All right, let's take a look at this one here. An online content creator who uses copyrighted songs without permission risks being demonetized, prohibited from including paid advertisements in content. The best way to avoid demonetization is to choose music from the public domain. Using one of these non-copyrighted songs blank, a creator won't lose advertising revenue. When we look at the answer choices, we have verbs. A is plural present. B is plural present perfect. C is plural present. And D is present singular. I'm noticing that they're pretty much all present or present perfect. And A, B, and C are plural. D is singular. I'm guessing maybe D would be my answer because it's the odd man out, but let's give a read. It says, using one of these non-copyrighted songs, what is doing the ensuring a creator won't lose advertising revenue? What's doing the ensuring? Using one of these non-copyrighted songs. Again, it might be tempting to look for the songs, but notice that's of these non-copyrighted songs. It's in a prepositional phrase, using. Using ensure or using ensures. Well, using doesn't end in an S, so we have to make sure it's verb does, and we can get rid of A, B, and C. All right, looking at the answer choices, we have verbs again. A is plural present, B is plural present, C is plural singular, D is plural present perfect. So again, C is our most tempting, but let's find our subject. The African Game Co-Production Market, one of over 180 annual international conferences supporting video game development, blank the growth of the African gaming industry by helping startup studios in Africa find partners. So, what's promoting the growth of the African gaming industry? It's the market. It's the African Games Co-Production Market. How many? Market. Just one, which means we can get rid of our plural ones and pick our singular answer. Looking at the answer choices here, notice I have finite, non-finite, non-finite, non-finite. So this one here is getting my attention at the moment, but let's double check by reading and seeing if we can find a good reason why we want the non-finite. The finite rather than the non-finite. So, several advantages. Then we have, check out this little potholder phrase surrounded by dashes. We can see that one coming a mile away. Several advantages. The ability to react strongly with chip components, to avoid interference from other waves, and to be confined within tiny circuits. Blank acoustic waves as a promising alternative to electrical waves for transmitting data on computer chips. As a result, researchers are invested in developing more acoustic wave-based chips. So what we can see here is if we take out this potholder phrase here, if we take this guy out here, our main clause is this: several advantages, blank acoustic waves as promising alternative to electrical waves. That's our main clause. We don't have a verb in it yet. We want to say several advantages have position. We wouldn't want to say several advantages positioning or several advantages by positioning or several advantages having position, because we need to insert a verb here. Otherwise, it's not going to be a complete sentence. So we'll get rid of our non-finite verb and pick our finite verb. Oopsies. All right, let's look at the next one. Looking at our answer choices, we have goes, present singular, will have gone, future, went, past, had gone, past. Looks like we're doing verb tense. Let's take a look and see which one we want. Tortoises can be found in many works of literature, For example, Tom Stoppard's 1993 play Arcadia, there is a tortoise that blank by two names, Platus and Lightning, and appears in both of the play's parallel timelines. As a character, the tortoise symbolizes the connection between the past and the present. So I want us to remember that even though we have found here, we're not, can be found here, we need to always refer to plays in the present tense, which you'll notice they do in case you didn't know that. There is a tortoise, appears as present tense, right? Symbolizes present tense. So we want to go for present tense here. That gets rid of future, past, and past perfect. And we'll go with A here. Oops. All right, looking at the verbs and the answer choices. Focuses, that's present singular. Focus, that's present plural. Are focused, that's present plural. Were focused, that's plural past. I'm noticing I have three plurals. A is a singular one. I also have a variation in verb tense and agreement. A is tempting me just because of it's being the only singular one, but let's double check so we don't get fooled. 10 of William Shakespeare's plays are classified as histories, although each one of these plays, which include Henry V and Richard III, blank on a single historical figure, specifically an English king. Some, such as Henry IV Part 1 and Henry VI Part 2, feature different episodes from the same monarch's life. So tell me, what is doing the focusing on a single historical figure? It says, although each one of these plays, and we have a little potholder phrase, which includes Henry V and Richard III. So we're really talking about each individual one of these plays, which is singular, so we can get rid of our plural answer choices and grab our singular one. Ooh, when I see the answer choices that are phrasey like this, it really does look like a dangling modifier. So let's look at our describey phrase. Woven from recycled yarn and hand-tufted using carpet weaving techniques passed down by the artist's Turkish grandmother. What was woven from recycled yarn and hand-tufted using carpet weaving techniques passed down by the artist's Turkish grandmother? Was it the topological tapestries? Was it the Argentinian textile artist Alexandra? Was it when she creates her topological tapestries? Or was it Alexandra herself? I don't think Alexandra herself was woven from recycled yarn, but you can see how tempting B might be because it says the textile first, but it says actually textile artist, right? The artist herself was not woven from recycled yarn. So which was it, the tapestries or when she created her tapestries? It's not a time period that was woven from recycled yarn, so we can get rid of C and we'll go with A. To illustrate Albert Einstein's special theory of relativity, picture two jugglers, one juggling on a steadily moving parade float, the other juggling while standing still on the sidewalk. The law of physics are identical for both jugglers regardless of their motion relative to each other. But what, Einstein wondered, about the speed of light? So when we look at the answer choices here, I don't know if you're anything like me, we're totally distracted by how cool these ideas are, but we want to see if jugglers should be possessive and what kind of there we want. So it says the laws of physics are identical for both jugglers. The jugglers aren't possessing anything, so we can get rid of the possessives, just for both of the two jugglers. They're not having anything, and we definitely want it to be plural, which gets rid of C. Now this says, regardless of they are motion. No, we don't want they are motion. Luckily, we already eliminated that one. Regardless of their motion, does the motion belong to the jugglers? Is it the motion of the jugglers? It is. So we want the possessive form. Remember, there like that means location. You should usually be able to stick the word over in front of there if it's that one, regardless of over their motion. No. That's not what we want. So let's get rid of B. All right, looking at these answer choices, we see that we have they, plural, those, plural, both, plural, he, singular. That's making D pretty tempting, but let's see what we're referring to. Felix Gonzalez Torres debuted his sculpture Untitled, USA Today, in New York City in 1990. The work consists of piled candy, a material Gonzalez Torres became known for. Blank created additional installations using a variety of sweets like bubblegum, lollipops, and chocolates. So we want to say who was doing the creating? It was Felix, who's referred to as a his. So we want to match the pronouns we've used already and pick he. Again, it's not many people or many or both that are creating the installation. Far from being a modern invention. Ooh, wait, this looks like a modifier. What was far from being a modern invention? Let's look at what should go here. Were the Sumerians drinking straws, the use of drinking straws, or ancient Mesopotamia more than 5,000 years ago? Well, tell me, what was far from being a modern far from being modern inventions? It was probably something that was an invention, a historical or an old invention. Sumerians are a people, not an invention. Drinking straws could be an invention. The use of drinking straws is an action, not an invention, so we can get rid of that. And again, ancient Mesopotamia is a location, not an invention, so we can get rid of that, and we can select B. Looking at the answer choices here, notice I have 3 non-finite verbs and 1 finite verb. Chances are I'm going to need to conjugate this as the main verb of my sentence, but let's give it a look. How did whales, once no bigger than seals, evolve to become the largest animals on Earth? Brazilian biologist Mariana Neri believes the answer might be found in the whale's DNA. In January 1923, Neri and her colleagues blank a study showing changes over time in 4 whale genes associated with body size. Notice that our main clause here, Neri and her colleagues blank a study, doesn't have a main verb in it. So that will lead us to pick the finite verb because Neri and her colleagues published a study. They didn't publishing a study or having published a study or to publish a study. All right. Notice what's varying in the answer choices here. We want to know if hands should be possessive or antennas should be possessive or whether they should be plural. Let's take a look. What makes the theremin a unique musical instrument? You play it without touching it. When you place your hands between the 2 antennas, the pitch will shift as your hands move through the air. So, when you place your hands between, is it the between of the hands? Should hands be possessive? Are the hands possessing the between? Oh, no, which gets rid of A, C, and D. Now, what if you're like, oh, shoot, I don't know if hands should be possessive? No big deal. You can check antennas. Should antennas be possessive? When you place your hand between the 2 antennas, is it the of the antennas? No. So we also know that the antennas can't be possessive. We'd still have to decide if hands should be possessive, though, if we go that way. But if we go for hands first, notice we immediately get down to 1 answer choice. Okay, let's take a look at this one. Notice the answer choices. We have is being present. Again, it's finite, so it's present, singular. B is present past. C is present singular. D is future. So let's see what we want. It looks like we're varying in tense, just because so many of them could be used for singular. With residents from Mexico, China, El Salvador, and many other countries, Los Angeles has long been a city of cultural diversity. Even back in the 1860s, ooh, I see words that literally refer to time. Back in the 1860s, nearly 30% of the city's population blank from outside the United States. We're gonna have to go for past tense here because they definitely gave us that time period to work within. So let's get rid of the present tense and the future and pick the past tense. When we look at the answer choices here, again, we're trying to decide, do we want possessive or plural? Novelist Jane Austen greatly admired the work of Fanny Burney, a popular English author. In fact, scholars believed that a passage from the last chapter of Cecilia, a 1782 novel by Burney, likely inspired the title of one of blank, Pride and Prejudice. So let's see. Is it the most famous novels of Austen? Do the novels belong to Austen? Absolutely they do. How many Austens? Well, there's only one Jane Austen. Remember, if it's S apostrophe, that's plural. So we don't want the plural possessive and we don't want the not possessive. That leaves us with A and D. Then the question is it one of famous novels, or does the novels possess Pride and Prejudice? A good way to tell it's not possessive is they both have commas here. If it was possessive, there wouldn't be a comma there because they would need to connect to each other. Commas only go between weak connections, not strongly connected things. And if something possesses something else, that's a strong connection. But the novels don't possess Pride and Prejudice. It's not the Pride and Prejudice of the novels. So, and again, it's one of her novels. Again, this would be one of her novel, singular possessive. So again, why we don't want D and do want A. And that is it for our practice for today. Please give me a little call or text if you have any questions.